When we have an anterior cross bite, it is ideal to treat it with clear aligners since we will need fixed bite ramps to jump the bite and cross this anterior cross bite. In this case, we have a bilateral anterior cross bite for both upper laterals, which are in cross bite with the lower canines. And it is important that we check a few things before we approve the treatment plan. These are the things we have to check. First of all, the movement, not just of the crown, but also of the roots. Usually the CAD designer is going to procline the crown, but we have to take a look at the chart of movement of every teeth and make sure that, for example, for this upper lateral, these are the values for the crown, but these are the ones for the root. And we see here below that the root is moving 3.8 degrees to buccal. This is okay, this is a reasonable value, but in some cases the CAD designer might not plan this much movement, and we should overcorrect it by doing this, by selecting it. So in this case, we are increasing it slightly. For this other upper right lateral, we have 2.8. We can increase it 2 here. But the important thing is that from the beginning, this is a movement that is going to buccal. Sometimes if we check it, it's going to lingual, and that is not acceptable, since usually the apex is already in the palatal side of the arch, and we need to take it buccal. For this reason, we have to check this. See, the system is telling us, okay, doctor, there's a great movement in the root. Yeah, we know this is a great movement, and this is not predictable with clear aligners. It's complex, and this is why we over-engineer it. The same as we would do with the Warren spring to create some torque, some root torque of this upper lateral, and we would leave it for weeks because we don't know. So it will be here, but we're giving the maximum value from the very beginning of the treatment. The second thing we have to check is that the attachment is carefully selected. Ideal thing is to place optimized attachment, but we can also select a conventional one. This is a conventional one in this case, and bevel it to gingival. If we bevel it to gingival, what we can achieve is a relationship with the aligner in which there is less webbing effect. See, here I'm modifying it, and it's bevel to gingival. It's an horizontal bevel to gingival. But as I was saying, ideally, we will be using an attachment horizontal, an optimized attachment. In this case, the CAD designer didn't select a proper one. This is a multi-plane attachment. We're going to select an optimized for extrusion because this is the ideal. Also, what we have to check is that the teeth have some space when they are moving. Therefore, we might use a metal strip in between the teeth to make sure there is no excessive friction with the adjacent tooth, so the system can move the teeth because there is a space. Or we can plant some spacing in between these and, for example, to distal. The space is not going to appear, and in case we were worried because of this, we could ask the CAD designer for a virtual C-chain at the end so we can close these spaces. But we have to make sure that the CAD designer is opening the space distal to laterals at the beginning of the treatment. This is important because in this way, if there is no friction in between these laterals and the canines, for example, the movement is going to be performed perfectly. One other thing we have to do is create as much anchorage as we can. For this, what we will do is include the wisdom tooth, or include as much teeth as we can. If we don't see tooth 2.8, we can ask the CAD designer to do it. I'm going to ask the CAD designer to include it because, as you will see right now, it was present in the scan, but accidentally, because the surface was not fully included in the scanner, the CAD designer decided to remove it. But this is important that we can include them in the scan. The more posterior anchorage we have for any treatment we're performing, the better the outcome will be. Whenever there is more anchorage, we know movements are much more predictable. So in this case, this is not going to appear after the live update, but I will ask the CAD designer to include it and not to delete it in the first aligner as it has been doing. So I want to create the same anchorage units in the second quadrant as in the first one. Having the wisdom tooth is helping me solve this anterior crossbite. This is one of the reasons why we usually include retention attachments in posterior segment to help us achieving this. So now, as you can see, after the live update, the system I am using for Invisalign clear aligners has already included this optimized attachment on tooth 22, sorry, on tooth 12, and I have this optimized bevel to gingival. And as you can see here, at the very beginning, the wisdom tooth, the 2.8 is present. That's why I asked the CAD designer not to delete it and include it on the system. This way, the prediction of the expansion is going to be better. As I was saying before, we have to check that the spacing has been created before. As you can see here, the system, the algorithm has not created the space from the very beginning, but at the end of the treatment, and this is something wrong. And this is why we have to ask to do it at the beginning of the treatment. This is quite important, the moment in which we create the space for teeth to move.